All right, let's get started. My name is Joseph Schooland. I'm an account manager here at Populi. Some of you might know Nick Holloway, our other account manager, or maybe you mainly interact with our support team. But either way, good to meet you if we haven't met before. So today I want to go over just working with tests. I don't know if you're also signed up for the one immediately after this, which is going to be on online learning in general. But for this one, we're just going to zoom in on administering online tests. And just by way of housekeeping, I want to talk about a couple things. One is if you have any questions, there is a Q&A box on your end that you can use to put questions in. Please use that and not the chat box. I will try and keep an eye on the chat box, but the Q&A thing with Zoom is much better as far as being able to manage questions and bring them through. I know that this is a little bit of a popular topic right now, especially the online learning one, which we're going to do in an hour, because of a lot of schools moving to online learning for the rest of the semester. And I just want to encourage you that Populi has all that stuff in place. Even if you've never used the online learning in Populi before and never done any online learning at all, there's no extra cost to just using some of those features that are already there. So I hope that's exciting for you and will make your guys' lives a little easier. I also want to mention that Populi is set up to be remote for the most part. We love our culture, and we have a headquarters where almost all of us come into the office, and we just like being around each other. But we do have a couple remote folks, and we've always made sure that it is possible for any of us to be able to work remotely if we need to. So don't expect any problems in your service with Populi. We're going to be here for you through all this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kill my video. And here we go. All right, you should be seeing my screen right now. By way of housekeeping, before we jump in, I'm going to start off with something I start off with every time, so maybe you've heard it before, but if not, it's great information for you to have. I'm going to go ahead and log in, by the way, as Felix Faculty. So because I'm administering tests, anyone with the academic admin or registrar role can go in and override any of the courses if they need to. But I'm going to assume that I'm working through this as a faculty. Now, the piece that I'd love to go over with, that I go over with you every time, is that if you need help, we love to help. In fact, we hope we have a great reputation for our support, and I want to continue that reputation and always make sure you have a good experience whenever you're reaching out to us. So this is how you get help. In the top right, you can click the help button. If you're the type who likes to research on your own, you can search the knowledge base. If you want to reach out to one of us, go ahead and open a support request. This will send us an email, and you can view those requests here after you've submitted them. They'll also show up in your email when we reply and have that conversation back and forth. If you prefer to talk through things over the phone, that's totally fine too. You can you can give us a call at 877, the number 4, and the word Populi. So you could just about memorize that right now, 877-4-POPULI. And if you want to make a feature request, you can do that here. If you want to visit the user forum and interact with other Populi clients, you can do that here. If you want to see recordings of any of the trainings we've ever done, you can do that. You can view those on our YouTube channel. They're also inside our help system. We have some interviews. Any new features that come out, we typically do a quick blurb on them. All these live trainings, including this one's going to be recorded and put on YouTube, and so on. And then finally, if you need some kind of one-on-one training, you can set up a training webinar with your account manager, which would be either me, if I'm your account manager, or Nick Holloway. So those are all the different ways you can get help. I'm going to go ahead and click on the knowledge base real quick. And we call the LMS inside Populi, just courses. So if you want to dig deeper into how anything in the LMS works, including tests, then you can click on courses and faculty. And you can even zoom in on this tests section with all kinds of articles regarding tests. All right, there you go. Let's go ahead and zoom in now on what we're here for, and that is setting up and administering online tests in Populi. I'm going to go to, pardon my old data here, but I'm going to go to a course that already has some information in it. We're going to zoom in here. All right, so the first thing you can see, we've got a lot of features here on the side. The first thing you would think is, I should go to tests, but you actually shouldn't. And we have a little note here that says you want to add a test. Well, first, go to the assignments tab and create a new test type assignment. So we have to make sure that they're in assignments, because assignments are what gets grades. And so that's the first place you're going to go, is assignments. Step one, go to assignments. Now I already have my assignment set up. I've got groups set up with different weights. Attendance is 15%, exams 30, projects 30, quizzes 25. I want to drop the lowest quiz here, and so on. And I've even got some assignments set up. You can see this column talks about the group. So in my quizzes group, I've got 4 quizzes, and they could be quizzes, tests, exams, whatever. We use the term test in Populi, but of course schools are going to call them exams or tests or quizzes, depending on how long they are and what they're using them for. To add that assignment for your test, you're going to click add an assignment, assuming you already have some of this other stuff set up with your groups. You're going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it quiz 5, and a description if you want, although you don't have to. There's a number of different types of assignments we can use, and I'm going to go over some of these in more detail when we go over the online learning stuff later. But for now, we're just going to do test. That's the type you need for it to show up under your tests, and you can start building it out. Once I choose that type, then I'm given certain options. I've got how are points calculated, and there's 3 options here. Fixed points just means that if I put in and say this is worth 10 points, then fixed points allows me to just assign whatever number of points I want to each individual question. And I want that to, and Populi will warn me to make sure that that adds up to the 10 that I've chosen for this quiz. But that way I can have maybe one question is worth 4 points and all the rest are worth 1. And so then that would make it a 7-question test, something like that. So if you feel like there's going to be certain questions that will have a little bit higher weight than the others, then you can do fixed points. If you think that every question, if you want it just to be equally weighted, then you can choose this option. And so now, no matter how many questions I add to this test, whether it's 5, if I added 5, then each one would be worth 2. If I added 10, each one would be worth 1 point. If I added 20, each one would be worth ½ a point, depending on whatever number of points I put here. And then finally, I'm not going to put any points here, but actually as I add questions and give each one of those questions points, Populi will just total it up. And that total could be anything. So if I give my first question has 3, and my second question has 3, and my next question has 5 points, my third question has 5 again. If you've been doing the math in your head, that's 16 points. And that would be what this assignment would be worth. So it's just going to total that way. So those are your 3 options: fixed points, weight questions equally, and just total the points as you build the test or quiz. You can also let this entire assignment be extra credit if you want. You're going to put it into a certain group that you've already created. I'll put this one in quizzes. We're going to do fixed points, 10. Is it published, yes or no? That just means is it visible to the students in the class so that they know this is coming? Maybe I'm still working on it, so I don't want to publish it quite yet. Due date, I can give it a due date if I want. If I do give it a due date, then it will show up on students' calendars when they log in for their courses. So they'll see that due date coming. When is this available? I can have it be always available, which essentially means it's available for as long as this course is active, between the start and end dates of this course. Available from means from this date to this date. So I can choose a certain date range for when this test is available. Available after just means after a certain date, and available until means until a certain date. So those are the 4 different types of availability that you can choose if you want. Do I want this test visible to the students before it's available? Yes or no? This doesn't mean that they can necessarily, this doesn't mean they can take the test. They just know that the test is coming. So it's not really going to be a pop quiz if it's visible. You can choose a time limit. We have a bunch of preset amounts here, or you can choose other and just put in whatever number of minutes you want. We'll say this is going to be 10 minutes. And what about my retake policy? Let's say I allow 2 retakes and I want to keep the highest score out of all the retakes. So I have 1 taking of the test, 2 more retakes, so they'll take it 3 times. I'm going to keep the highest score. I can require proctoring for this test if I decide to do that. Then when the student starts the test, this is a little bit blown up, this picture, they'll get this image before they can take the test. A proctor is required in order to take this test. Please have your proctor fill in the form below. The proctor will fill in this information and then hit next, and then they'll be sent a text message to verify their identity. I can also require a password. Maybe this is because I want everybody in the room with me, maybe not these days, but I want everybody in the room with me, and I'll release the password at a certain given time so that anyone who did not show up to that class on their computers is not going to be able to take the test. So that's one limitation you can put on it. And I could also filter by IP address. IP address would be essentially a network that your computers will be a part of. So if you want to require them to take the test at your school, then you can require that. I'm going to go ahead and leave all of these unchecked for this example. All right, before I move on, I'm going to answer a couple questions here. Hans asks, how can I set up a section of a test where students may choose from among several questions to answer? For example, choose 3 out of the 4 terms to identify without throwing off Populi's score calculation. I think I'll hold off on answering this, Hans, and we'll go into the different types of test questions that you can use. And I think that might answer your question to do a check all at apply type. If it doesn't answer, then throw another question up there and I'll dig into it deeper. Devin asks, if faculty forgets to publish the test, but the test date comes up, the test won't be available to students, correct? That's correct. If they don't publish it, it will just never show up. So that would be a mistake because the due date came, but the students never were able to take the test. All right, so we've created our test. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. It has now been added to my list of assignments for 10 points. Notice I didn't put a due date in, but it's available for the length of this course. And again, pardon the old data. All right, from here, I want to give you a quick look at the 7 different question types, and then we're going to dig into that one question. Notice how, I don't know if you got a photographic memory or not, but before when we looked at this, there was only quiz 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now quiz 5 has been added, and that's because we added on the assignments side. Let's take a quick preview look at the 7 different question types, and then we'll go ahead and I'll show you how to build those, but I want to give you a kind of a show before I tell. One type is matching. So match the buildings with their architects is the example here. And so I can choose architects to match according to this. Next is put in order. So I can move these around. Essay questions, just like it sounds, to type out an essay for an answer. True or false. The multiple choice. And notice here that on any test question, I can put in images, audio, video, a 5-page PDF, something like that, so that students can look that over and answer according to whatever image or video file you put in there, or audio, whatever it is. Short answer. So I want to fill out that blank. And then check all that apply. And in this case, you might choose 3 out of the 4. Here I'm just saying, check whatever ones you think are right. So I'm not even giving the clue that there's 3 or 2 or however many are correct. Those are the 7 different question types. Let's dig into actually designing a test here. Once we start, we've got quiz 5, and we can, right now it says it's empty, and so we can add, let's say, a heading. We'll say this is, I'll just call it week 5 or something like that. And then below that, I can maybe add some text. Answer the questions below. And you can do these headings and text throughout if you want to divide the test up a little bit. I can also grab these little arrows and move boxes around once I've already created them. If I need to edit that, I can edit it. If I need to delete it, I can delete it. And now I want to add a question. There's a few different ways to add questions. I can create a new question. And here I would just choose what type I want to use. If it's multiple choice, then I type in the question and then type in however many answers there might be. A, B, C, D. And then I would choose which ones get credit. So typically you're going to have only one is going to have 100% credit, and then the rest would be 0. But it's possible maybe one of them could have 50 or whatever. I haven't seen that very much, but of course you can decide to do that depending on how you set up your test. And then finally, you can choose to randomize these so that every student will see these in a different order when they see this question. I can add this as a category, or add a category for this question, maybe week 5. That way I can pull this question up whenever I want to look at questions that I think would be fitting for a week 5 type test. And then because I chose fixed points, remember, it tells me that we've got 10 and 10 unassigned, and I just choose how many points I feel like this should have. 2, 1, 3, whatever. And I can make this individual question extra credit if I want. All right, so that's multiple choice. Short answer, type in the question here. And again, I can add my file here if I want. Also, by the way, whenever you add files to Populi, let's choose this one. Populi gives you what's called an embed code. And so I can copy this embed code, take it into the test, and instead of adding a file, put this in next to my question. And so then Populi will actually present that file in here without me having to upload a new one, because I've already uploaded the files I want to use to my files section. Just a quick pro tip. Once I put in my question for short answer, then I just give the correct answers for automatic grading. Now I don't have to do this, I can just manually grade it, But to save yourself a little time, you might as well at least put in the correct answer so that Populi will auto grade it if they enter that. And then maybe you could put in some others that weren't exactly what you were looking for, but you'll auto grade that to 50%. And then maybe you'll put in some that you think the student might guess, but you want it to be 0. So you can put in as many of these, you can anticipate whatever answers you think the students are going to put in, and then put some value with it. And then if the student does put that in, Populi will auto grade it. If the student puts in something different, or even misspells one of these words, so Populi can't recognize it, then we'll go to your to be graded holding tank, and I'll show you that in a sec. You can even be so specific you want to use case sensitive grading. Again, you can add this to a category. An anonymous attendee asks about the question bank, and this will send it to your question bank, and I'll show you what that means in just a sec. Put in order, question, list the options in the correct order, and then Populi will randomize it for you. And then they'll have to put them, rearrange them into the correct order again. And you can do partial credit for that if you want. Multiple answer, just put in your answers and then check boxes next to the ones that are correct. I'm putting in random letters now. So for that 3 out of the 4 questions, then maybe I would want to do something like that. I can have it be randomized every time and give partial credit. Essay is just a question because Populi can't auto grade an essay. It's just going to give a box for the student to type in, and you can grade it later. True or false is just that. Give a question and choose whether true or false is correct. And then finally, matching. Give a question. This would be like the buildings and their architects. And then, if I remember right, and then just list them up right here. And then Populi will give them those matching options. Tad asks, are students able to download files that I post for a lesson, say a movie file? I need to know if I can upload copyrighted material for view only. Thanks. Tad, I believe that students can download any file that you put in. I don't believe there's a way to hide it from the student. And I think the main reason for that is because, I'm gonna look here real quick just to see. I think, so if you actually put the file in there and they can't download it, if you put in the embed code, let's try that real quick. Pardon my clicking all around as I chase this down. Yeah, I believe that they can download it no matter what you do. Appreciate that question. I don't think there's a way we can get around it. If you want to push that a little farther, I would suggest you reach out to support. They might be able to dig into it a little deeper than I am on the fly. right here. And you might be able to get a better answer. One thing I would note is that for someone slightly techie, because I work for a software company, if I can see a file, then I can download it. I assume quite a few students are that way these days too. So that's just a side note to not go into false assurance that even if another system says that there's no download link, it is downloadable if you're just slightly techie. Sorry, I don't have a better answer than that. Push on support if you want, and our more technical folks can answer it. Anonymous says, if you don't put an answer option in the short answer question, will automatically be sent to the to be graded by faculty. That is correct. I'll show that in just a sec. All right, so now we're in tests, and I've got my tests, which I've already dug into. Notice how I just kind of showed you those. I didn't dig into deep. I didn't want to build a whole test in front of everybody, but hopefully you got the idea, and ask questions if you don't. Someone asked about question banks. This is your question bank. So whenever you add a question, they're going to go here into the questions bank. And if you gave it a category, then that category will also show up, which is handy because then you can sort by particular categories if you want, or by things that have no category. And you can even do something like this. Actually, I sidetracked myself. Let me run through other ways you can add questions, and then that will answer the question. So here I just create a new question. I can also create a new question based on an existing question. Populi will ask me to search for another question. I can pull it up, hit continue, and then I can build it off that. So this is something I've already created. Here's the question, here are the answers, and I can tweak it a little bit and create a new question from this. I can import an existing question by finding the question. And so I just want to copy this from some other test I'm already using. Or I can add a group of questions from a category. So if I've been managing my question bank well, and I've got my categories set up well, then I can say pull in from week 1, 10 points, 5 questions. Hit save. So now these 5 are just going to be divided up by my 10 points here, and it's going to pull 5 questions at random from the week. Sorry about that. I had to restart. I am back now. Please let me know if you can hear me. I had a couple of people say they couldn't. It looked like I had it set on mute, and I didn't realize it. Good. Okay, I see that you can hear. Good. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Okay, back to the test. I just want to make sure I got cut off, so I want to make sure everyone saw this. But the fourth way that you can add questions is instead of doing one, like creating a new question or a new question based on existing, or import one from somewhere else, you can do a group of questions from a category. And here I can just choose the category I want to use, how many points this is going to be worth, and how many questions I want to pull from that category. If I pull in 5 questions from week 1, and there are 10 questions total, then Populi is going to pull 5 questions at random. If I pull 5 questions in from week 1, and there's only 5 questions total, then every student's going to see the same thing. So it's a way to shake it up a little bit if you want students to see a little bit different test. Anonymous asks, can you filter multiple categories? Can you filter multiple categories when adding questions? Yes, you can. So I could have 5 questions from category week 1, and then I could also have so many questions from another category. And week 1 might not be your category. It might be, anatomy, and then the other one is, chemistry, or something like that. Maybe those are your categories, and you're just going to pick and choose from a few from each category. And then back to question banks. So everything you create in any of your tests is going to land here inside your question bank, and you can manage it and use it here. So each test, especially if you import, that's why you can import questions from other tests. You're essentially importing it from your questions bank. And if you want, and if your registrar has allowed you to do this, if you're the faculty, you can even import questions from other courses, any other courses that you have access to or that are allowed to cross questions. Okay, so Populi by default is going to grade every single one of the question types. The only two that Populi won't be able to grade is short answer if the student answered with something Populi didn't know. So remember, I think this one was planning and technology and science or something like that, where the answers I already plugged in. Simon answers structure. And so then I can choose to give him partial credit maybe, or 0, but it's going to be in this little bank. So I don't have to go digging into each quiz to find these questions that need to be graded. Everything will show up here. The second one is essay. So of course, Populi is not a human being and not smart enough to grade an essay. So Simon's student has, he answered big essay. So I'd probably give that 0 points. I can also add comments if I think there was some confusion on the test or whatever. Someone asked, what do you mean if the registrar allows? So faculty by default cannot pull questions from courses that they don't teach. So they can't steal some other faculty's questions. Unless the registrar goes in and specifically opens up a setting for that course that lets questions move across from course to course. So it would have to be the registrar or the academic admin. Those are the roles that we use in Populi that have high enough access to things like your course catalog to let those things move across different courses. All right, so I've shown you kind of a preview. I've shown you how to design it, the test. There's some other things you can do too here, and that is Populi will show you a history of all students who have taken the test, how long it took them, the letter grade, they received, the availability for that test at the time they took it, and the IP address they took it from, and then the proctor, whether or not they had a proctor. I can delete these if I need to. If I click on the start time, I can see the specific test, see the student's face if you guys are using profile pictures, and I can even make comments. By default, these comments will be visible to the student, but if I want, I can check this box and have it just be an internal comment for me to keep track of the student's progress. That is history. Let's go back to, tests. And then we also have a tool on your test called analysis. This one doesn't look very amazing right now because I only have Simon who took it twice, but it essentially just shows you the responses and average scores and all that for all your tests. So it'll help highlight if there's a certain question that you have in quiz 1 that nobody ever gets right. And maybe you want to rescore that for everybody. Or you want to just take note of that and change the question or how you're teaching the course because it highlighted that for some reason students aren't getting a certain component. Casey Smith says, for everything except the essay option, couldn't students consult their phones for answers and instructors would be none the wiser? Is this correct? That is correct, and that's true. That's true for every system. In fact, systems that tell you that students can't cheat because they lock down the screen. We live in an era where students can just consult their phones. So that's not a foolproof way to prevent students from cheating. The only, I don't even want to call it foolproof because cheaters are going to cheat, but the only real foolproof way, or as close as we can get that we think, is to have a person in the room or just a person standing next to the student. And that's why we have the proctoring feature, where the proctor has to actually engage with that student before they can start the test. And the proctor also has to engage with the test after the test is over. All right, another thing I want to show you is that once you've created a test, there's a bunch of places where you can add what are called exceptions. So for example, maybe a certain student was sick or something happened, and so you want to give that particular student an exception for the due date, or an exception for the availability, or a little bit longer time limit, or they can have a few more retakes, or some students have to be proctored when others don't, or some students don't have to be proctored when others do. You can even set up on the student side where this particular student has to be proctored in every test. Anonymous asks, can you show how the proctor option works? I can't fully show it to you because it involves texting back and forth. But here essentially is what happens. The student will log in, get ready to take the quiz. When they take the quiz, this pops up instead of the quiz. A proctor is required in order to take this test. Please have your proctor fill in the form below. And the proctor will fill in the name, address, email address, name, phone number, email address, address. Little checkbox, hit next. And then Populi will send them a text message to verify their identity with a code. The proctor will enter that code, and then the test will be able to be started. And then a similar thing will happen at the end. So the proctor has to finish the test for the student also by entering the code they got on their phone. All right, we covered grading. So Populi will grade everything except for things like essay questions or answers on short answers that you didn't anticipate. And then those will all get pushed to the grade book. You can put comments in there. And then at the end of the course, you would finalize that course and those grades would get pushed to the transcript. Any questions on tests, administering tests, setting tests up, grading tests? Anonymous asks, I'm reading through some of these questions that are coming through. Anonymous asks, how can I set up a section of a test where a student may choose from among several short answer or essay questions? That is a great question. Currently, what Anonymous is doing is give a fixed point value for each option, but then Populi will score any unanswered term as a 0, and that is true. So instead, they've put them as extra credit and then told the student to disregard that designation and then probably graded them later. Because when you go into the history, you can edit the points one by one. Really, the only workaround would be to, in my mind, would be to have each one with a point value, and then you can edit the points and maybe give full points to the ones that they skipped, as long as they skipped them appropriately. That would be a great thing to put into our feature request form. If it's not already there, it might be there, and then just vote for it. Sorry, I don't have better news on that one. Good question. Denise says, so in short, proctoring can't be done via Populi or Zoom. Literally, you have to find someone physically where the student lives, like, for example, their mom or something. That is correct. I mean, I suppose it could be done by taking a video of the screen, but it's designed to have someone physically in the room. And again, this is going back to what Casey mentioned, is that unless someone's in the room, there's no way to know that a student, well, in my mind, I mean, I know people have different opinions on this, but there's no real way to know that a student's not going to be using their phone. And Robert mentions that we are thinking about digging a little deeper on that in the feature request form, as far as something more than having a physical person present. So anyone who's interested in that, I would encourage you to go to the feature request form, hit search the knowledge base, feature requests in the community section. And let's search for Proctor. Thank you, Robert. So live proctoring service with Populi. So someone has requested this. It looks like it has 0 votes, but a few comments for this one in particular. This is in the user forum though. This is not a feature request, so maybe that's part of the problem. I wonder if Adam linked this to a feature request. Anyways, you guys can dig through this. If there is no feature request, this is in the user forum, so just users are talking about it, but if there is no feature request, please add a feature for it. And then folks can vote on it. And see if we can figure out something that really works, that is not something that students can easily get around. All right, Denise says, if you were to start a test for all students simultaneously, like make it available for only 2 hours, are you able to see which students are in the room? And that's in quotes. So I'm guessing, so that would mean, people who are actually taking it right now. If so, how? As far as I know, there is no way to see which students are taking a test at this moment. So you would not be able to see which ones are taking the test. At the end of the 2 hours, you could see which ones actually took it. But during that 2 hours while the students are taking it, I don't believe there's a way to see that someone is actively working on this test. All right, I'm to the bottom of the questions. Any more? I'll hold on for just a couple minutes just to make sure that I'm not knocking anybody off. All right. Well, for any of you who have registered for the online learning in general, we're going to tackle that. Of course, because I'm tackling the whole thing, I'm not going to be able to get into the level of detail we did today. If you want to get into more detail on different things, please dig into our live training events. I have things like grading discussions, how rubrics work, how to set up your assignments, and so on. So those would be all other, a bunch of other, even some high-level stuff on courses, intro to courses, and that's what we call the LMS. So dig into that and have fun. Another question, Tad says, we're using Zoom to participate in this webinar. Is this feature of live chatting already set up in Populi? Is this feature? So this will be the kind of thing I think I'll handle in the next webinar on the online learning, but good question. So we do have a chat room built in to Populi. It is just for text. And then we also, text that can handle images and audio and things like that. And then we also have something called, we can integrate with Zoom and Big Blue Button to do live video conferencing for your class. That's not built into Populi. It's something we just integrate with Zoom and Big Blue Button. So the feature, the integration is built in, but it's not something we do. You have to actually purchase Zoom or Big Blue Button to make it work. And I'll be showing that in the next one. Christopher, how does the feedback work? I'm not sure what you mean, Christopher, but I'm going to take a quick guess. If any student in any assignment, you can see a list of the students' names, and you can click on their names, and you can see what they've done with that assignment. Assignment hasn't taken quiz 5, and I can add comments and hit post, and then he'll see those comments. For my internal comments, I can save these for later, and I can access these to the gradebook by clicking on final grade right here. And it will show me, if I click on, sorry. Here we go. If I click on course comment after clicking final grade, then I can enter in a comment that will show up on Simon's grade report if you guys are using grade reports. And all the comments that I left that were internal will show up here along with all of the assignment grades. So then that way, if I've been keeping notes along the way, I can see those notes, see how they correspond with, like, here, Simon did well on the midterm, final exam, class project. So each assignment will have that tied in. And so then I can feed that into this public comment that's going to go on his grade report. That's how most people use them when they're leaving internal comments for themselves. Casey says, thank you. You're welcome, Casey. I really appreciate that. Good to hear. And I hope to keep on doing a bunch of these. All right, guys, I'm going to cut us off there. And maybe I'll see a few of you in about 10 minutes as I prep for the next one. Hold on. Good. Okay. Nope. Good. Everything, questions are answered. Maybe I'll see you in 10 minutes. Take care, everybody. Bye.